Good morning. Welcome to the Mirror Point where reality checks itself. Today we're going to be talking about non duality and whether Christianity actually taught non duality. Was Jesus a non dualist? Let's get into it. Good morning, everybody. Scott here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day today. We're going to be talking about non duality and Christianity. And today I'm going to be reacting to a video that comes from the Recovering Catholic. And he is of the opinion, apparently, here that Jesus taught non duality. And so I'm going to watch the video. I have a few thoughts of my own, being an ex Christian myself and being sort of familiar with Christian history, church history, apologetics, and things of that nature. And I'm also very familiar with non duality from different perspectives, including idealism, the modern form of non duality from the West. And so, yeah, I wanted to compare what I know to what he's saying and share my thoughts. Now, keep in mind that a lot of this stuff is interpretive, and I'm not here to tell you how you should interpret scripture if you're a Christian or a non Christian. It's up to you to decide what you think. Um, whether you think history bears any importance on interpreting the New Testament. Some people don't. Some people feel like the original teachings of Jesus are not really reflected in all of the teachings of the early church and the canonization of the New Testament. And so people have different views. Some people see Jesus as a non-dualist. The church tried to say he wasn't, but a lot of the teaching still bled through. And so some of the things Jesus taught were very non-dual, and many things were not. But we'll check this out. We'll see what you have to say, but we'll go ahead and get started. Let me turn this up and go.
So was Jesus an original teacher of non-duality? Hello, my friends. It is I, John, here in the studio having a fabulous day. It is lovely outside. It's almost 50 degrees here in the last day of February. Just a lovely sunny day outside, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Let's talk about the concepts of non-duality. The idea that there is no separation between God and creation, that God and you and the world are one. The idea of this teaching is something that Jeshua, the guy that I call Jeshua, Jesus, talked about. If I use strictly what is said in the Bible, can I prove that he was a teacher of non-duality?
Another thing to keep in mind is that non-duality doesn't necessarily entail gods, okay? But there are forms of non-duality that do entail God, like pantheism, for example. Some interpretations of pantheism, that the universe, that the greater mind, the cosmic mind is God. It's just the label that they put on the greater mind, so to speak.
There's a lot of teachings in the Bible that talk about the oneness of God and the oneness with God. The book of John says, I and the Father are one. This is a direct statement about the unity of God and not separation. It literally is saying that the Father and I are one. And the idea of that is a non-dual statement. We are as one. The book of John says, the words I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority. Rather, it is the Father living in me who is doing the work. Now,
so this is used also to promote the concept of Trinity, where God, Father, Holy Ghost are one thing. But he will continue, I'm sure, to talk about how it's inclusive to the disciples and those who follow Jesus, I'm sure.
Of course, I don't believe in a patriarchal external male God, a father figure, but in this quote, he's acknowledging that God is not separate from him, but working through him. Now, in the book of Luke, he expands on this non-duality. The kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God is within you. This idea that the oneness of God that he was just talking about being in him is now being reinforced, that the divinity is not only within him, but it's within you, and it's internal, not external. It's not something we pray to or praise outside of ourselves. It's an internal thing. The kingdom of God is within you. He talked about this oneness repeatedly all the way through the Bible. And as we dive into these other quotes, you find very quickly that he's literally saying that you are one with God. Whatever you did to the least of my brothers and sisters, that you did unto me.
But I wonder if that is talking about one in substance or one in mentality or attitude. That's the whole question. Understand certain sayings are frequently cited as non-dual in tone, like the kingdom of God is within or among you. I and the Father are one. Abide in me, and I in you. Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. John 14:9. So these can be read as pointing towards radical intimacy with God and human, participatory union, or collapse of strict subject object separation. From a non dual interpretive lens, they can sound very familiar. So I can understand this whole attitude.
Matthew, the book of Matthew. Whatever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me. You're looking at the people around you, realizing that what you're doing to them is affecting you. It's affecting Jesus. It's affecting all of us in this implied oneness of God, this interconnectedness. So whatever you do to them, you're doing it to me. And it reinforces this whole idea of non-duality or oneness. In the book of John says that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they may also be in us. It really includes everybody. It includes all of you. They may be in us. In other words, understanding that we are one in divine unity. That divine unity is spoken of everywhere in this Bible, and that those concepts of you are just prevalent. But Book of Matthew, he causes his sun, spelled S-U-N, to rise on the evil and good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. In this comment, there's no distinction between good and bad people in God's eyes, in God's presence, in the oneness of God, because everyone's part of God, and there's no part of God that's either good or evil.
So this dissolves the creator creation distinction, if that's true. So for me, that may cause a tension between other scriptures that talk about man has no understanding of God. God's ways are higher than man's ways. So this becomes a little bit um, contentious in a way. There's a tension there if this interpretation is a strict interpretation. That's something that I'm thinking about right now.
They are just in the unifying existence of God. And the delineations of separation of good and evil literally take away the non-dualistic ideology that Joshua is teaching. The ego is the dualistic thinking. And what I mean by that is the identification of I. There's a Hindu proverb that says, the drop dropped its name and became the ocean. And it comes to understand that we are part of that. The book of Matthew says, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Denying thyself, denying the ego. This is a complete non-dualistic ideology, because it's telling you to set the limitations or the barriers or the parameters or the borders of your skin down and connect to the oneness of everything.
Yes, that's a very far Eastern wisdom sort of perspective. But in the context of Jewish thought, um, it's not really clear whether non-dualism was a thing. So, like I say, while some sayings attributed to Jesus sort of resonate with non-dual themes, the Bible is, though, a product of the early Christian community. And historically, Jesus taught within a Jewish relational framework rather than a fully non-dual metaphysic. So, like, non-dual readings are later interpretive overlays, not established doctrine. But, the non-dual reading survives because, we have mystical experiences often that will use like relational language. Union metaphors are cross cultural. So later mystics like Meister Eckhart, like Eckhart from Eastern Christian um, Chasm or whatever, pushed that language very far. Christian mysticism. So it may be a stretch or it may not. It just depends on how you want to interpret this stuff.
You know, the book of Luke says, "Judge not, lest ye shall be judged." Well, if you're judging yourself. You're judging the oneness, the unity. You're also declaring yourself as a judge, which makes you set in a hierarchy that's separated. Because so you literally judge yourself as judgmental.
And this is why I say, even if you don't really perceive yourself as a non-dualist, the language in many ways gives it away, especially when you start talking about morality, ethics, how to treat one another. It ultimately always collapses into non-dualism, because non-dualism is, for me, the foundation of treating others as you would have them treat you. It's being empathetic, seeing others in you. It's non-dual awareness. And anytime we start talking about topics of morality, it always seems to go into a non-dual perspective. What's confusing though is the language we use. So it's very intuitive to see other. I mean, that's the whole catalyst. That's the whole meaning behind helping others. When you see another person suffering, you have to see other. So that's a big part of it. But in order to be moved, to be motivated, you have to have a non-dualistic sort of outlook, perspective. Otherwise, why would you care? Why would you care about the other? They're not you. What do they call them? Mirror neurons in your brain, even from a physicalist point of view. Mirror neurons are the way to see mind in others, to be empathetic. When you see somebody, you know, be hurt somehow, you sort of feel hurt with them. You're like, ooh, you feel some kind of way because you empathize. You know to yourself that you're just like them. You're a consciousness just like them. It's just that you're relational. So there's a non-dual aspect. There's separation, not separation, all at the same time, which in our language sounds like a big contradiction. But in fact, it's not really. It's just that our language is limiting. And so, yeah, you can easily see the non-dual teachings in the Bible, and you can also see the dualistic teachings in the Bible, because that's the problem with dualistic language. It doesn't always cohere with our morality and how we exercise it.
And judgment itself comes from a dualistic thinking, a non-duality. And the non-duality dissolves judgment. As soon as you have non-duality, there is no more need for judgment. And now, a quick word from our sponsor, Coffee Time with John. John'sJoe.com. Treated a certain way, you treat others that certain way because it affects the direct connection to your oneness of God. There's no distinction between the self and others in true love, and God is true love, and no fear can exist in true love. So there's no delineation. Even the stories of Jeshua and his healings are demonstrations of non-duality. You know, It is your faith that heals you. Oneness with God brings instant results, right? That idea that I am putting myself out and putting the faith in the story, it means the outer expression is creating in my expression. It means I'm not separate from the universe, not separate from God. Whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these. Greater works than I've done, you will do, right? This idea of greater works than I have done, you will do means that the work is happening in and through you. If he was not separate from God, then neither are we, because that's what he taught. He taught this empirical oneness. Father and I are one, and you must become one with me as I am with the Father. How do we take this?
Right. So again, that points again towards how our language sometimes betrays us. Whenever we try to apply morality, we always approach it with a non-dual attitude. Non-duality is the attitude that we approach morality from, because it's called empathy. We empathize with others. We put ourselves in their shoes. We share commonality. And so we resonate with that commonality because we are all relational conscious beings. We're all in a field of consciousness. We're in a field of subjective experience. That's the field, an intersubjective field. And because we relate within and participate within this intersubjective field, morality intersects there. That's where morality intersects. Because in order to be motivated to help another, you have to have that sort of understanding that resonate. You have to be resonant to their pain. You have to be able to put yourself in their shoes, so to speak, which we all can very easily. We know what it is to suffer. We know what it is to have relief from suffering as well. And because we understand this, we have compassion. And compassion is born of a non-dual perspective. But it's also born of a dualistic outlook, though, because you have to see the other. You have to see the relation. So it all, though, collapses together into one reality, right? So that's I think that's the perspective that I'm getting, is that the language betrays us, but of course, healings and things of this nature are going to signify a non-dualistic sort of thing, because it's all based on doing good towards others, because you would want good being done towards you.
This idea of non-duality, this oneness that Jeshua speaks about all the way through the Bible. How do we take it and we put it into action? How do we get some practical steps? First of all, you gotta break free of fear-based religion and and start to realize that the core of your essence is love, right? Einstein said the most important thing you'll ever decide is whether you live in a friendly or unfriendly universe. I look at this from the idea of the Old Testament God being vengeful and jealous, and the New Testament God being loved or love. And the idea of this is that do you choose to create this loving spirituality? You know, recognizing that God is not separate from you. Things like sitting in love, that my meditation practice that I do, or just smiling at somebody and seeing them smile back and recognizing that's a divine moment between you and the oneness of God. But that connection, release judgment and see others as extensions of yourself. Are they giving you a reason to not see love in the world? Are they giving you reasons to judge them? In reality, the reason they're judging them is not because of them; it's because of you. You have
That's right. And we speak a lot about forgiveness and mercy. And you think about things like atonement in those cases, at oneness, at one-ment, rather. This is how you become one with God. because of the fact that you become aligned mentally in your experience with the greater reality. Some call it God. You can label it any way you want: the universe, the cosmos, reality, right? Got a question. Scott, are you mixed? I think we're all mixed. This is what we're talking about in a way. But if you mean like directly mixed, yeah, of course. I've got Hawaiian in me, um, you know, uh, German, Hawaiian, Irish, whatever. That's what you mean. I mean, I got that light skin gene, so I'm just curious. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That would account for the my skin tone, is that my mom was Hawaiian. And so yeah, I come from earth people. Anyways.
Have an idea or a belief around them or about them. And so you judge them based on the ideologies that you have. And those ideologies create judgment, which means that there's a separateness. There's a judgment, which makes it your ego, your self identity, judging them for being wrong or good or bad. And that is a dual or a dualistic style of thinking. You know, Jeshua's teachings were not about separation, but unity. You love one another. I leave you one commandment: love one another. So take these concepts of non-duality, start looking at the world as an expression of yourself, start finding the beauty in all things. And if somebody doesn't look like they're having a good day, deliver that in this oneness through that person. This
Yeah, and loving yourself is part of that. By loving yourself, you can love others, right? Like even on a psychological level. Because if you're an angry, hurt person, there's nothing there psychologically, or what I call spiritually, because I kind of see psychology and spirituality very closely related. So that journey is a psychological journey. And if you don't have that self love, then it makes it it creates a wall, because you're not seeing others in you see others in yourself. So if you see yourself in a bad light, you're going to see others in a bad light. Others are like a mirror to yourself. It's the mirror point. And that's why self-love, self-care is very important. It's going to help you become a better person towards others as well. Again, non-duality.
idea of putting out love and getting love in return is taught everywhere. What you think you become, you create your world. Thought by thought, you forge your destiny. These are Buddha and Krishna talking to you here, talking about that your thoughts, your beliefs about the now are created in this oneness of God that's around you. And Joshua said the same things. You can ask mountains to move, and it'll move. Nothing's impossible for you in non-duality, in oneness, because you and the Father are one. And within the Father is everyone and everything. The outer world is an expression. If love is an energy, and everything that we're looking at is an atomic energy in motion, like Einstein says, and that all atoms are over 90% empty space, and the wall beside you, the air between you and the wall, and your eyes are all made of the same stuff. That means you're part of that energy. You're part of that oneness. And within that oneness, there is this consciousness of you. And Hinduism, they talk about the sit, which is the consciousness of God, and the sit sat ki, which is the individual sparks of consciousness within the one God. So it always comes back to this idea of oneness and non-duality. It's about treating people as if they were part of you.
That's the whole point. And the beauty with that is you can approach it from, like he said, a scientific perspective, a more spiritual perspective, psychological perspective, if you will. You can be a God believer or not and be a non-dualist. It's just a recognition, and it's a practice. For me, it's a recognition and a practice that our language really betrays us, and that to really be ethical and to really show kindness, I have to have that perspective of non-dual, because then I see myself in others. I can see the universe in other people's eyes, so to speak. It's the catalyst of doing good to others because you want the same for you. And dualism at the same time, sort of paradoxically, has to also be there. You have to have that contrast in order to have a reason or a meaning to show that love. Like if there is no, challenges in the world, then there's nothing that's going to give you the catalyst to um play that role. You have to have a stage to play on. You have to be within a context. And that's the dualistic sort of perspective. But that's not the whole story. That's the only part that I'm saying is that dualism is true, but it's not the whole story. And our language sort of frames it as if that is reality, that everything is local, everything is disassociated. But then it has a hard time of explaining consciousness. It has a hard time to explain morality, ethics, love, things of this nature. These are things that are born of non-duality. These are the things that connect us to intersect. It's that connection point. And this is the catalyst also for doing good, is seeing, yourself and others.
Treating the world as if it's a world that you are creating, because the outer expression of the world is an expression of your beliefs. And we live in a collective consciousness, but within that collective consciousness, we are all creating our own experiences. And you could sit at the same table with somebody and have two different experiences with the people around you. And I've told stories about me and a guy going to a restaurant one time about how that he had a bad waitress, a bad meal in a restaurant that he declared that he hated. I had a great meal, a great waitress who I dated for a while. And on top of it, when I came in and the waitress was in a bad mood, I turned my love towards her to give her that loving expression. And when I sat down at that table, there were two negative people. When I got up, there was one, because I took my oneness and I passed it to the person who was accepting their oneness and becoming part of that oneness. It's a matter of that non-duality being part of your responsibility of
Right. That non-duality gives you a sense of responsibility. So that's the whole thing. Non-duality promotes responsibility to others. And yet others is part of the language of duality, isn't it? The other. Yet the responsibility comes from non-dualism. So these two sort of intersect. Are you ex-theist or atheist? No, I am not a theist. In the strict sense of the word, I don't think so. And yeah, I used to be a Christian. I used to be very fundamentalist long, long time ago. And then I became a very hard, angry atheist, at that stage of my development in life, in my journey. And then it didn't work for me for whatever reason. Atheism just didn't really work for me so much. And so I started looking for a third way. And that's when I discovered non-duality, where you didn't have to really be a theist, but you could still resonate in the mystery of the world, you know, understand consciousness, things of that nature. What made you angry? Yeah. So again, dualism, the dualistic teaching of the church made me angry because it fostered a sense of others. And so it never really promoted compassion. Even though it was taught within the book, the emphasis was always on the other. So we would see the false teachings of other religions, the false teachings of the non-believers. We would see them as those who we had to feel sorry for or condemn them in many cases. Even within the church, there was a lot of judgment of others. There was a lot of comparison. And so it was like a form of church hurt at play. But then also, what sort of sealed the deal for me was epistemology. So, what that is, the study of why you believe what you believe or come to know what you say you know. And what I come to realize is that I really didn't have a good reason to believe a lot of things that I was having a hard time already accepting. Right. And so it felt like a disrespect of my intellect. It was like I was forced to feel bad to doubt. To doubt was to, was something you had to push through. No one wants to be the doubting Thomas. Nobody wants to be um falling for the tools of Satan. Satan is the one who puts doubts in the minds of the believers to move them away from the glory of God in Jesus Christ. And so this doubt persisted, and my questions were never answered from the authorities. And in fact, I became an authority. I became very active. I became a leader. And that even put more pressure on me as a believer, because then I felt an obligation to not have doubt. After all, I was supposed to be helping others to not doubt. So I became an apologist, and I became very active in that, talking to others and things of that nature. And once I discovered that, my epistemology, all of these things were sort of wrong, I left. And because I was a very fundamentalist sort of religion, all it takes is one thing to be in question. This is what I say. If I was part of maybe a more liberal Christian church, like a more universalist kind of church, I probably would still be a Christian today. Reason I say that is because when you're a fundamentalist, the Bible is infallible. All the teachings of the church are infallible. If even one thing is wrong, then the whole house of cards comes tumbling down. And I found more than one thing wrong, right? And so it all came tumbling down. And so I figured to myself, if this is wrong, then all of it's wrong. So I became an angry atheist. I felt misled, deceived by churches and things of this nature. I bought into the fundamentalist ideas about other religions. So I was pointing out all the religions, including my own religion I escaped from, as all just bullshit and a force for bad in the world. But then, as becoming an atheist, I came to see things like God is not real, Satan not real, like you say, but like Satan isn't real, right? Or do you think he's real? No, I don't. Like I'm saying, I don't believe any of this stuff is real anymore. So that's part of being an atheist. Um, and being an angry atheist did not serve me. And so I got more of a perspective, more of a balance on that. And then it moved me into a more spiritual mode of thinking, a more inclusive way, a more compassionate way. And it led me to this non-dualistic sort of thinking. I started studying, ideas from Buddhism, Hinduism. Um, idealism, and I really resonated with that instead, sort of as a third way. I feel like saying angry atheist is a dig. Wouldn't angry ex-theist make more sense? Yeah, possibly. But I identified as an atheist at that time. That's the thing. And when I say atheist, I mean one who denies the existence of God. I didn't believe God existed at that time. So I rejected the idea of God. So I was an atheist. I didn't believe God is possible to exist because in this world of deception, in this world of suffering, in this world of evil, how could there be a God? How could there be a God that would allow those things? That was my thinking at the time. But now I realize that, you know, that all of those things became more examined over the years, and it led me to where I am now. So that's what I mean by angry atheist. Anyways, let me finish out this video as we're almost done, and I'm going to bring Dave on stage as well.
Recognizing the world around you as an expression of your oneness with God. That's what Jeshua taught. That's what Buddha taught. That's what Krishna taught. That is taught all over in all various forms of spirituality. And it's a matter of understanding that is one of the very true universal truths that you find everywhere. And treat each other well. That's the golden rule. It's found in all traditions. So remember that you are one with God. Remember that's what Jeshua taught. Non-duality, being one.
Okay, so before I bring folks on the stage, I just wanted to give a few thoughts about this. So, yeah, I can see the non-dualist language at work in the New Testament, and I can also see the dualistic language at work in the entire Bible. So, kind of the way I look at it is that Jesus taught, and remember, Jesus didn't write anything. That's the first thing. Jesus never wrote anything. People wrote about Jesus. And accordingly, Jesus taught an intimate participatory relationship with God that can sound very non-dual. But those teachers were later framed within a theological system that preserves real distinctions rather than really dissolving them. And so this kind of view avoids an anachronism, right? You know, an anachronism is something belonging or appropriate to a period other than that which it existed or is portrayed. So, like I said, the Christian church existed within a time of duality, theologically speaking, because Christianity quickly reasserted dualities there from the early church. They affirmed creator versus creation, God versus world, father versus son, saved versus unsaved. Even mystical strands never collapsed these distinctions really fully. And that really tells us how Jesus was ultimately understood, at least by the church. So, like, I would say the strongest non-dual language in the New Testament comes from the book of John. And for one thing, it's the latest gospel. It's the most theologically developed, and it really reflects like post-resurrection reflection, not really like raw history or memory, right? So most scholars would probably agree that John reflects the theology of the early church about Jesus, not simply the teachings of Jesus. Because you got to understand, Jesus was a second temple Jewish leader. The temple was rebuilt after the Babylonians exile. So that was just a few hundred years before Jesus. So he was born into that context. So his conceptual world would have included that creator versus creation. God is personal, covenantal, and transcendent, ethical obedience, and communal identity. This is not non-dual metaphysics. not in the far eastern sense, or from the earliest teachings of the Ptah from ancient Africa that taught non-dual idealistic views even early on, right? This is nothing like that. But I always say, though, that language gives you away. Whenever you start talking about ethics and morality, you already start smuggling in non-dualistic perspectives, and that's what kind of shows the inconsistency with non-dualistic religious teaching. I mean, dualistic religious teaching, rather. But anyways, guys, if you want to join the conversation, I've got a link in there, so feel free. We can discuss it, man. I have Dave in the backstage. See if he's still with us. I'm going to bring him on, see what his thoughts are. Hey, Mr. Dave, how you doing, sir?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. Sorry to keep you waiting back there. I just wanted to get through the reaction first. But any thoughts on the video so far?
Well, I agree with the general sentiment that this gentleman has. I definitely see the non-dual aspects of it. I I am a dualist myself, so on particulars we disagree, but definitely love and compassion, sharing with others, these are key elements of what I believe to be right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really good. Like I say, I think, in my opinion, far be it for me to define what people are, like what they identify with. But I would say that everyone is sort of a non-dualist and a dualist. They're both. So I would say that I'm a dualist in a sense, but I'm also in a sense a non-dualist. And in actuality, it all sort of collapses into non-dualism, because whenever you have two different things at play, it's one thing, logically speaking, right? So like, if you're approaching, like, I could say, Dave, you do a lot of good things for people. You and like you said, you agree with the gentleman that was speaking, right? And so you kind of
Yeah.
see, you kind of have this empathy, this kind of understanding. You're able to put yourself in other people's shoes and feel compassion, and that's all non-dual sort of perspectives at play there. But at the same time, it's because of dualism, because you see them as the other. And this sort of intuitive experience can sometimes just, it's easier to see the world as dualistic. And we rarely give thought, though, that maybe it's actually non-dualism in a sense, because, but we don't really take it that far because we're so embedded in our culture and in our language. Does that make sense?
Yes, I see what you're saying. I see myself as dualist and I see emergent properties from that dualism. And the emergent properties in almost every case is a non-dualism. And then the non-dualistic properties that then emerge have additional ones above and beyond them. Um, we are, for example, a collection of atoms, and those atoms are collections of organs, and those organs are a collection of eventually the person. The person is is an element of a family. The family is an element of the community, and the community is an element of the country, and the country is an element of the world. And I see each one of those things as both dualistic and non-dualistic, and I see them emerging from one another. Does that
Yeah,
make any sense?
that makes a hell of a lot of sense. And that's exactly what I'm kind of talking about. Um, that that is exactly what I'm talking about. That emergence even sort of implies non-duality,
Yes.
because it emerges from something common. There's some common core fundamental element that everything comes out of. And so when you think about reality, and then you think about reality, the external reality versus our experience of it, and you say, well, the human mind, we tend to compartmentalize things, create containers for things. we create distinctions, dichotomies, descriptions, because this is very useful to define things. You have to define things in relation to other things, the opposites, right? Up is the opposite of down. This is dualism. Up is not
Yes.
down. How can you have up if there's not a down?
And it becomes non-dualistic at the other end as a spectrum. So you always have these spectrums. So yeah, there's an up, yeah, there's a down, there's a middle in between. There is black, there's white, there's shades of gray, there's shades of color. So there's all these spectra that appear when looking at the dualism and non-dualistic connections. So I agree 100% with what you're saying. It's the way the
Exactly.
world seems to really work.
That's why I say I think we disagree all the time. We always agree with each other. So
Yeah, we do.
we always do. So Joel David, I'm gonna let, if you don't mind, would you like to answer this question? He says, I miss most of the videos you guys are responding to. Would anyone be willing to give a summary or overview? Would you like to give an overview of the video since you were here from the beginning?
It would be difficult to represent the other gentleman correctly. I don't know enough of the Old Testament or the New Testament to make the connections that he was making. He was eloquently making connections with the various books of the Bible and the New Testament. And I thought that he should actually do it if he wants to, because I'm simply not well enough versed to do it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Gotcha. No problem. He's just asking for a summary, so I'll give the overview of it. Basically, this came from, the Recovering Catholic, and he was basically saying that Jesus looks like Jesus, and the name of the video was Jesus Taught Non-Duality. So he was saying that Jesus taught non-dual teachings, and I was just giving my thoughts on it, and he referenced certain Bible scriptures that sort of outlined those non-dual teachings, like for example, Luke 17:21. I remember this one. It says, the kingdom of God is within you, right? So that's a non-dualist teaching. I and the Father are one, just as you are one with me. That's a non-dualistic teaching. John 15:4 would say, abide in me and I in you. So that's sounds almost like something from the Vedas. John 14:9 says, whoever has seen me has seen the Father. So again, non-dualism, connection, then the idea of atonement, at one-ment, is a non-dual language, right? So because of such scriptures, this guy is saying that, Jesus taught compassion from a non-dualistic lens, because compassion is born out of a non-dualistic sort of worldview, right? And so I was just kind of reacting to that video. Anyways,
Could I
um,
say, then Jesus's Beatitudes, they are also dualistic and can be seen through a non-dualistic lens. Those are the key elements of Jesus that I tend to focus in on more than anything else. The Beatitudes.
yeah, like the meek shall inherit the earth.
Yes, yes, the idea that we should be giving to other people, we should be helping other people, we should be helping the world around us as well. We should have reverence for all of these things. um, at least because we rely on them. At least we rely on them because we're all
Hmm.
really just a big family, aren't we?
Hmm. Hmm. That's what it is. That's exactly right. Because without the notion of other, then there's only yourself, right?
Yeah. Yes.
But
Well,
if
the problem with
you see,
monism is that
yeah,
it's a
and
single.
yeah, it's a single thing, where you could say everything is one thing. But with monism, like let's take one of the monism. There's something called, and Michael Shermer describes this. Are you familiar with Michael Shermer?
No, I'm not.
Okay, Michael Shermer is the president of Skeptic Magazine. And so what he does is he's very skeptical about religious claims, supernatural claims, and he's a professional debunker. So he
Sure.
debunks a whole lot of things, and he considers himself a materialist monist. And what that means is he says basically everything is just matter. Everything is matter and energy. Everything is just one thing. Even you are just the universe. It's almost like he always repeats the Carl Sagan thing. We are just the universe experiencing itself. So in a monist sort of view, the one thing isn't the person of Dave. That's not the one. That's not the monism he's talking about. The monism he's talking about is the universe itself. So you are that material universe, just like you had just outlined that you emerge from the atoms and the carbon and the elements of the universe. You are part of the universe. You are an expression of that same universe, right?
I agree with the non-dualistic aspect of that, but the monistic aspect of it leads to a problem that I see in our society, which I want to stay away from. The problem in
Mm-hmm.
our society is that people are either subjective or objective because they can't figure out how to deal with the monistic issue and their ethics and everything else around them. So I see a lot of people, most people are very good people, and they mostly, for the most part, are subjective. And it seems like they're led by the objective accounting of big business. And because of that, I tend to really want to stay away from the monisms. When I add them together and I can use a non-dualist perspective of dualism and non-dualism, if I can use objective and subjective, then I can see a balance. And the Beatitudes work, dollar wise and penny foolish. And I can see myself helping all the others. I want to see how I can always help and how we can have social contracts that help everyone. But with monism, it tends to not work that way because it degenerates to either subjective or objective thinking. And we can see the results in our society, how the life has been squished out of it into 1% right now.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean. I watched a video with this speaker. His name is Destiny, and he was debating with Alex O'Connor. And Destiny was saying, well, he's a monist, and he was saying that, I don't feel compassion for animals because animals are not me. They're separate from me. They don't think like me. They're probably not even conscious. Whenever you hear a dog or cat squeal and cry, don't feel sorry. It's kind of like the same way when you grind your gears in your car. It's just making a noise. But the gear doesn't feel anything. It doesn't matter. So this sort of monism, I think, is what you're talking about. This sort of idea that, the only thing that counts is my subjectivity.
Well, if that subjectivity is backed up with the intersubjective recognition of your accounting firm, and that's what gives you stability, then you end up being fairly wealthy, don't you? But
Hmm.
if you back off a bit and say, "Gee, that animal out there at least is part of the world that I need to be in, and I need that part of that world to be there. I need the diversity that I get." Then maybe it doesn't feel, maybe it does, but then I really do have to care. I really have to care that the world that I need to live in remains intact. So,
Yeah.
from that perspective, yeah, at some level, we eat only things that are previously living, other than like salt. So, yeah, there is a point where I can't care what my food feels. But
Hmm.
we all need our groceries. I mean, we got to have groceries, got to have food. But other than that, what I need, I want to feel that the animals can feel. I want
The
to feel that everything can feel. It all has reactions. And I don't know enough about consciousness or unconsciousness um, to understand what they actually have. I simply know that I need them, and I need them to be working well in my world. Is it?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And like I would suppose destiny is against animal cruelty laws. He thinks that's irrational, stuff like that. But Joel Davis says, seems like this is that very general, widely acceptable usage of dualism that isn't necessarily about fundamental substances or even properties. Right. Well, kind of not. One sort of springboards off the other. It's just that the focus here was on the religious aspect of teaching, but that's rooted in the fact that we are of the same substance as God. We are of the same substance as others, right? That we're all the same. That's the root of this whole claim that Jesus was a non-dualist teacher. And what I think is that I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It could just be a tension with language because, like I said, in the context of Jewish thought of Second Temple Judaism, there was a God and creation distinction. We are not God. In fact, you could be stoned to death for saying you were God. So there were laws against non-dualism. You
don't
couldn't teach that kind of stuff.
don't we all have the divine spark within us? And
That's
can't
what
we
I
add
believe.
ourselves together? Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
so we
that's why they wanted to stone Jesus.
okay.
And that's
Well,
what I'm saying. It's kind of hard to really pin that down, I think. But let me
I
get through some of these questions here, Dave, because I think one's for you. We are the best way the universe could express itself. That's all we are, right? And then uh, she asked, Dave, how do you determine what is objective? What are some examples? That's from collapsalism.
I get hungry. Do you get hungry too? I know that I think therefore I am Descartes kind of thing, and I get hungry. So if I can satisfy that hunger, then I have a reinforcement in my intersubjective understanding of things that I can deal with that issue and I can label that objective. If I can repeat that process, then I can have more information doing that. Meanwhile, pure subjectivity are things that I can't verify or connect to the outside world in any reliable fashion. But it seems like every day I get hungry. Every day I want to find a meal, at least one. And if I can do that, then I have an objective sense of things. And then I have the logic of mathematics and the processes of science. I have the ability to have consensus and physics. And I see all these things coming together, giving me information that I can use to predict the future, predict the world around me. And because I can predict the world around me, I can have this phone that I'm talking to you on right now. Um, all of that comes together. So I see objective as all of those things that I can connect to the outside world again and again and again. And I have consensus with my fellow human beings that tell me that I'm on the right track. For example, when I walk through a grocery store and I get my food and I pay for it, I have a consensus with the cashier that I have paid the same amount as they think I should pay. So at that moment, I have an objective one-to-one correspondence with something in my environment that satisfies my need for hunger or the fact that I get hungry. So I have both. I have a subjective and an objective world.
Hmm. Gotcha. And I don't think destiny is against the laws. I did read in Reddit one time where he said that he was not in favor of animal cruelty laws um, because we eat milk, eggs, and things like that. Um, think there was one destiny that I'll try to post it here. He said that humans deserve moral consideration, but animals don't, because humans have the ability to communicate and understand complex ideas through language, while animals don't. Um, so let me see if I can share that here. There's a video. Yeah. But I don't want to detract to it. I'll just sort of paste it in the live chat so you can look at it in your own time. I don't want to get detracted from what we're doing.
Dr. Sapolsky points out that a lot of animals seem to have some form of communication. They have some way to, they have the ability to have more than simply act and react. They have the ability to go through Skinnerian act, react, and reinforcement kind of things. And that reinforcement is the objective side that makes it happen. I think animals do feel quite a bit. I
Yeah.
think everything feels quite a bit, but in the sense that I feel, my consciousness is very human. So can
Right.
the sun, can the sun, can the star have a consciousness? I don't know. It
Sure.
seems to go through a life cycle. I don't
Why
really
not?
know, but why not?
You know,
Yeah, why not?
why
Yeah.
not? I think until we can sit, I mean, anybody can sit down in their philosophical armchair and from their personal credulity make judgments about these things, or we can just be agnostic about it until we have experiments to, show it one way or the other. And it's so hard to do because we can't even prove that each other are conscious. Like I couldn't technically prove, Dave, that you exist as a conscious being. You could just be a robot or a figment of my imagination that just talks and walks like a duck, but isn't actually a duck, for example, right?
Certainly.
Um,
But so I have the hubris to say that maybe you're right. I have enough hubris to say that maybe you're right, and I really don't know, but I do know that I get hungry, and I do
yeah,
know that I think, and I ask you, do you have the same properties? Do you think? Do you get hungry? I mean, seems to
yeah.
be seems to be true.
You'd rather err on the side of compassion.
Exactly. I would rather
Yeah.
err on the side of compassion. I try to follow the Neo-Confucian ideas that Lao Tzu gave.
Hmm.
Because his ideas tied together the ideas of Mencius and the ideas of Confucian, the ideas of Tao, of the Tao, the idea of Buddhism, which really are saying very similar things to what we see in the Western philosophies in Christianity, in Jesus. We see these very similar things in Judaism. We see those
Right.
dualities being applied. They're quite beautiful. And I tend to want to think in terms of the nesting properties of those. What are those dolls that dolls they have where they nest one doll inside another doll, like a
Yeah.
Russian doll?
Yeah. The Russian dolls, the nested dolls is what they call them.
Yeah, the nested dolls. They are both show dualism and non-dualism, then emergent to another dualism, and then another non-dualism, and they keep moving up. And Lao Tzu's ideas of community do the exact same thing. They follow that same chain. After the vital relationships of Confucius, which are very important. So
So
yeah,
yeah. So Joel Davis says plenty of Christians don't interpret this verse to mean that we are all the same stuff as God. Many would call that heresy. Exactly. And that was kind of my point, is that you could get stoned to death for um, preaching non-dualism with God. Um, in that context, in that religious context. And so a lot of I believe that just the language of empathy was what was at play. And empathy is always going to use non-dualistic language because it's always about connecting with others. And but I believe that it could be argued that Jesus was a dualist. It's just that he was using non-dualist language sometimes, especially when he was talking about doing good to others and things like that. So that could be where the interpretive side of the Bible comes in, you know. And then Paul says, "Hello, hey Paul, how you doing, brother?" And then Collapsalism says, "Oh, I'm not a fan of Destiny. He weird as fuck. Animals definitely can feel remorse and sympathy. When you act like your dog hurts you, they actually feel something." I agree, and I always err on the side of compassion myself, just like Dave here. And collapsalism also says those are just functions of biology. This is for you, Dave. Those are just functions of biology, though. I'm not understand why getting hungry is a point of objectiveness.
what does objective mean? Doesn't the word have something to do with facts, and subjective have something to do with opinions? I mean, the basic and dictionary definitions of those two words lead me to those two conclusions. Those conclusions. I
Hmm.
don't understand a more complex definition. Um, if subjective is something I have an opinion about, then I have opinions about all kinds of things that may both be real and not real, some that are extremely important, some that are extremely philosophical and very moral, and some things that are purely just for fun. Um, just my appreciation of walking around in the world or seeing children laugh, those are subjective. I know that because there's nothing, I have an opinion. I don't have any statistics to work with or have any information to work with. But getting
So,
hungry is different.
so objectivity is a noun. So it means lack of bias, lack of judgment, lack of prejudice. So it's like when you maintain your objectivity, it's is the most important job of a judge, for example, like a judge in a court. So the meaning of objectivity in that sense is easy to remember when you see the word object embedded within it. So it's the thing that is within your experience. It's that object in your conscious experience. Um, Now, there's another way to look at objectivity too, which is to say outside of mind, like that thing outside of your mind. Um, that's an object. Like in it, for example, a fact is outside of your mind. Like, is Scott objective, Dave? You would may say yes because he's outside of my mind. He exists whether I'm here or not. He would exist whether my mind is here or not. So you could say
Isn't
like
that,
an objective fact, like so in your case, you could say like in biology, is biology outside of my mind or is it inside my mind? And you would probably say, well, no, biology isn't subjective. It's outside my mind. It's objective. It's something that is going to exist whether my mind exists or not. Like I could
I
lose
would
my mind and still be a biological creature, maybe.
I would agree with everything you said. I would also add in the bulk of human knowledge. I would add in everything that's written as something that we can say, this is written. This is not inside my head. This is this book. I can hand you this book. I can hand you this paper or this article. And there's so much information there that I can transmit that is not in my mind. Even if I die, and I go on to God, regardless, um, the what I write might still exist after I'm gone, and anyone who looks at it will say, "Well, it factually exists. It may not make any sense, but there's something written there." That's one of the magics. That's one of the magic things of our species, that we have this concept, this ability to transmit information from generation to generation without being there. That's an amazing thing. So I would have to say that the library, the library is full of objective things that are not in our mind that we can put in our mind, we can work with for a while, we can take them out. And I think the most objective thing is accounting, that where we are both responsible and accountable, and then we can get and assigned to us from society and to ourselves authority and rewards for having taken responsibility and accountability. Um,
Okay,
and
so
that's objective.
this goes into the question collapsilism is asking you again. What does dualism achieve then? I'm not educated on it.
Dualism achieves the fact that we both have objective and subjective needs. It gives us the ability to say, yes, we can think, we can definitely have these beautiful and oneness thoughts, but at the same time, we also must recognize that we each get hungry. Those are two different elements. And that gives us the ability to be compassionate. A mother has to be responsible and accountable for her children, at least initially, or they won't survive. That is the most important behavioral thing there is motherhood. And I don't know why men tend to go off on all these uh, spiritual things, on all of these subjective, thoughtful things, but the behavior of a mother, I'm just fascinated with. I think it's absolutely incredible and a beautiful and wonderful thing that is truly objective. I'm wondering. I don't know. I don't. Is it possible there's a connection between the role of women in society throughout the years, throughout the history of humankind, and the fact that they have to behave in a particular way, and the men are free to think in a particular way? Is there a connection there?
For me, I mean, I always look at it like, when you're a dualist, you're going to see other, and you're going to be able to make judgments, and you're going to be able to create roles for different people, because you're going to see the other as having one role that's different than my role. And that's sort of a dualistic approach. And then there's a non-dualistic approach that would say, no, men and women, we're all just humans. We're all the same. We're connected intimately, and we should treat each other with how we want to be treated, and not assign roles and things like that. But that's depends on what view you come through. Now, collapsalism asks, accountable to who? Being accountable is subjective to who you give the authority to, she says, or he says, I'm not sure.
If you have a newborn infant and you don't feed it and you don't keep it warm, what will happen to it?
Well, then the response is she does not have to.
Yeah, she doesn't have to. But our survival, our evolution, the process by which we came about, must mean that we have had ancestors that survived. So they must have done something to do that. Yes, any individual can choose to do something other than that, but it seems like for the most part, throughout the animal kingdom and throughout that we take care of our young to some degree. Maybe I should keep that with mammals and
Well,
birds.
think about that in terms of objective, subjective. Is there an objective reason that you have to, or is that a subjective reason that you have to? In other words, if we have to eat to live, right?
Right,
But we have to not eat if we don't want to live, right? So
right.
that wanting, is that subjective or objective? The wanting.
Our executive function can be said to always be some form of subjective or intersubjective thought process, getting information from not just our senses, but through our limbic system and other parts of our brain, giving us that ability to see things and assign the word objective or factual to intersubjective things that we recognize. Why not?
Well, that right. But I'm saying, if you want to kill yourself, would that be a subjective want or the objective standard?
You have a subjective want. You have a prediction for the future. It hasn't happened yet. Um, objective, more often than not, refers to, I think, a historical fact or something that you know is a pattern that you see. You can only kill yourself once, so you really don't have a good pattern there to work
So,
with.
so are you saying that it's just an objective fact that we should always seek to live?
No,
And, and
I'm
so wait. But maybe word this, like, let's relate this to hunger. Is it an objective fact that we should eat because of hunger?
yes.
Okay, but if you don't want to eat, that's subjective, right?
Well, we always have times when we don't want to eat as well. We always have the ability to say we've had enough,
No,
right?
no,
We've
that's
had
not what I'm
enough
talking
food.
about. I'm talking about, suppose there's these protesters that want
Hmm.
to starve them. They go on these eating protests where they don't eat to
Gandhi,
protest, like in China, right? Like
like
they'll
Gandhi.
say, yeah, like they'll starve themselves literally to death as a form of protest. So right there, are they violating objective facts of hunger?
No, they're simply not utilizing them. The objective information isn't can't be violated. I mean, it simply is. Um, it's a datum. Objectivity becomes a datum. Whatever your datum is, if your collection of information of thought is based, if you verify a fact as a fact, then you have some kind of collection of information there. If you're making a prediction into the future, uh, you aren't making you don't have any collective information to really say that it is. So you have to have some subjective capability. You have to call it almost a hypothesis. If I don't eat, eventually I'll die. I mean, that could be considered a hypothesis from that point of view. But once it occurs, you can say, then the next person can say, yeah, you died, you didn't eat. I saw it.
Mm-hmm. So in other
So
words, I'm just trying to like frame collapsalism's point for you is all I'm doing here. And says we make the subjective choice to take care of our young. So the choice to do the thing that you're saying we ought to do is he or she saying subjective choice subjective. And so in this sense
yeah,
it goes on, says no, it's not an objective fact we should eat. It's objective that we will die if we don't eat or drink.
yeah,
And collapsalism is a he. Thank you.
yes. I would have to agree with that statement. Yes, it's a subjective choice to eat or not to eat. It is an objective result that we can record if we do one or the other.
Gotcha.
So
So
they're
when
there.
it goes back, so I guess we're gonna try to go back to the whole point that started off about it's an objective fact that a mother should care for her young.
Yeah, it's an objective fact that mothers have cared for their young for many, many generations, and we have physical evidence from archaeological and anthropological information from geology. We have factual information that we can show so that this is the pattern. And then we can see that our bodies physically try to tell us that we need to do these things in order to maintain ourselves. And our bodies tell us that we need to do these things to maintain our children
So then
physically. I mean, there's
that's
chemical
collapse.
inputs.
Yeah, you're I think everyone agrees with that objective fact that if you don't eat, you die. So collapsalism says no, it's not an objective that she should care for her child. So Dave, let me ask you this. This is something I think that he's pointing to. Are you familiar with the is ought problem?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
So
Yeah.
because something is a certain way does not follow that it ought to be that way. So in other words, because it is an objective fact that um mothers traditionally throughout history, like you said, cared for their children so that the children could grow and do the same and promote the species. Because that is an objective fact, it doesn't follow that one ought to do it. I think that's the point he's making. So collapsalism says, I'm sorry, Dave, you misunderstand objective when referring to child rearing. So I think that's getting to the point of the is ought problem. I think if I'm mistaken you, collapsalism, let me know. Are you referring to the is ought problem? And this is kind of well known in philosophy. So
Can
he
I say
says
something?
that is
Can I say on
okay.
an individual basis, I have to agree with him. He's absolutely right. On a communal basis, I disagree.
Okay, so collapsalism says he says that is not an objective fact. Thought plenty of fathers raise their kids solo. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not an objective fact that only mothers can rear children, I guess is what he's saying.
I was referring more to the biology rather than the community we currently have, but you're absolutely right. And on an individual basis, that's absolutely true. And in our current world, he's absolutely right. Uh, Person per person has the choice to do what they want to do. I believe that free will exists in the confines of the laws of thermodynamics, chaos, and the system stability. Um, so I do believe that that this gentleman is 100% correct for the individual, but for the society as a whole, it doesn't quite work that way. I believe the society as a whole, I think we're communal creatures, and as a society as a whole, for the most part, we have to take care of our children. And that role over the last several million years has been mostly delegated to the mothers from birth to at least a year old.
Okay. So he's now saying then you're arguing for subjectivity because men don't lactate.
I'm arguing for both subjective and objective.
Okay.
I'm not arguing for one or the other. I'm saying, yeah, they're both there.
Okay. Okay. So okay. Well, interesting. Um I think the point for me to bring it back to non-dualism is just, it's more of having your subjectivity align with the objective facts. So to the extent that you can do that would be the extent that you actually participate in the non-dual world we see. You know what I mean? Like we can sort of mentally withdraw, but even when we do, we're still affecting the overall system. So let me see. Let me go through these questions. Joel Davis says the difference between the individual and the society doesn't make a difference on what is subjective and what's objective. How do you respond to that?
I'd like further clarification about what he's really trying to say because I don't understand the question.
Okay. Let me read it one more time. The difference between the individual and the society doesn't make a difference on what is subjective and what's objective. So, in other words, because individuals and society are different things, that doesn't redefine subjective and objective.
If we remember history, I think history is objective. If we remember the facts accurately, I mean that's fairly simple to me. I don't see how that's anything other than subjective. And in accounting processes, it becomes an exact number. It becomes an exact thing. In money, it becomes an exact value. And so I see a very objective need for people to have money to move throughout our society to get the energy they need in calories throughout our society. So I see money as a very objective thing, moment to moment. Every transaction is objective and agreed upon between two people, between two entities, between a company and yourself.
Yeah,
So
I believe it. Yeah. So Joel says he's going to call in for a minute. Please do, man. Collapsalism says you don't understand the question because you don't know what is actually objective. He says, is it objective all males have dicks? That's subjective.
Actually,
because
no,
we
all
can use
males don't
bottle
have
caps.
dicks.
Because we can use bottle caps instead of money. But okay, so yeah, male. Maybe I'm trying to understand when you said, is it objective all males have dicks?
No, they don't. There's diseases. There are errors in coding. There are children that are born without a dick that actually have a male chromosomes. There's such a disease. LGBTQ people are not lying. That's the way they really are. And there's a lot of physical evidence to show that that's the way they are. There's a lot of the brain actually reflects the characteristics that they behave, the way they behave. So all men don't have dicks, but For the most part, they do. So the community becomes very important in saying that that's the way it is. But can individuals be other than that? And I say, yeah. I don't understand individuals' needs. I think about and work to try to understand the community's needs.
But what about people that identify as female that have dicks?
What
Are
about them?
they invalid? Like, are they objectively wrong for that?
No, no, they're not
And I'm
wrong. There's
confused. I'm
nothing wrong with that.
confused. So if you're saying, like, the question was, is it objective all males have dicks? So you're now saying that it's also objective that females can have dicks.
I'm saying that objective on the individual basis is, yeah, it can happen in any way. And chaos is a fundamental notion of our universe. Chaos and the ability to have chemical mistakes that result in these various variations of how the human body might form within the womb are true.
So
They actually happen.
I'm okay. So I'll be honest with you. I'm a little confused too with what you're saying with objectivity and
I'm saying,
collapsalism. I'm asking that question because I'm trying to figure out how you're defining objective. Because the only objective thing he has said was that math exists. He's talking about biology. He wants to be subjective in one part and objective in others. So what is objective? But let me bring Joel on. Maybe he's got some good questions to ask. Hey Joel, how you doing, man?
Hey guys, what's up?
Doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm taking care of my little daughter today, so I might have to jump off, spring into action in that way. But yeah, I was listening in and thought, yeah, I'm a little bit agreeing with the comment about kind of nailing down these definitions. But is that where you're going?
Yeah, I think we're quibbling about objective, subjective, trying to nail down a good definition here.
Yeah. Hey Dave.
hi,
I, I think we've interacted in the group before, right? You go by Dave A Pandeist, right?
yes, sir. I think you're right.
I thought that was you. Yeah, I thought that was you. Okay, great. Um, yeah, so I think I heard you say that objective things were facts and subjective things were opinions.
Yeah, that's my,
Was that kind
yeah.
of
What
the
does Google say is the
definition for
definition
me?
of those two words? If I go use
Yeah, well, I'm
Google,
not sure
I'll
right
lose
offhand because
connection with
yeah,
SteamYard. So,
exactly. Yeah, when you're on your phone on SteamYard, you can't quick pull these things up. I feel that pain. So listen, one of the things to think about is that the common use definitions of those words that come up are going to be the way people commonly use them in conversation. And there's just a slightly different definition that people use within the context of philosophical conversations. And again, um, like when we're talking about the dictionary definitions of subjective and objective, we might say like a person can be more or less objective about their, for instance, like a judge who's presiding over a trial. We might say, well, we think they were really being objective about this. And what we mean is that they were setting aside their personal biases and opinions and really just looking at the objective facts and not inserting their own opinions. Um, and that's an acceptable way to use these terms in common conversations. But when we're talking about ontology and metaphysics, and when we're talking about, I think the start of this was about morality, right? What is
Mm-hmm.
morality, subjective or objective? When we're
Mm-hmm.
talking, when we ask that question, we're not saying is morality um, a thing that can be more or less objective in the way that a judge can be more or less objective. We're asking the question of whether the fact of what it is rooted in something that is mind dependent, or whether the fact of what something is rooted in
Right,
something
right,
that's independent of our minds.
right. That's what I was getting at. Very good point.
And I think what Dave has highlighted is there are things that are facts independent of our mind that are part of our consideration of morality. So, for instance, what happens to a baby if no one is taking care of it? That is kind of one of those things. It doesn't change depending on what our opinions about it are, you know. Um, and
I
so, a lot
agree.
of times when people, yeah, go ahead.
I agree. I think the Buddha was very right when he talked about his Four Noble Truths, when he was talking about minimization of suffering. And I think the only real factors that come into at least objective morality, as I understand it, is the is suffering and group size, um, and self versus the world kind of thing. So it's a trolley problem kind of thing with uh, uh, suffering and group size as the most important factors. I don't really understand subjective
You're talking
morality
about
really
group
well because,
size.
yeah, group size. Yeah, so um, yeah, I think that morality has a lot to do with the ability of large groups to get along together with minimal suffering. So I
Yeah.
think it's an evolutionary trait. And
But
so
even if it
if
was just
that's
you and me,
true, what?
even if it was just you and me trying to get along, morality would work that way too. We would say there's a right way and a wrong way for us to treat each other. Even if it's just you and me locked in a room for the rest of our lives, there's going to be better and worse ways for us to act. So I'm just confused. I mean, I get how morality is often not just about how we behave, but how it affects others. So, I mean, no matter what the size of our group is, we have to be thinking of others when we're doing morality, you know. But
hmm
but no, I don't think group
Except in the
size.
case,
I don't think the size of the group really comes in as an important factor. Whereas you said size and suffering, as if both of those things were um, you know equally important in our consideration. Uh, whereas to me, you could just set aside the size of the group, and we could really talk about just whether or not actions and behaviors are leading to suffering or not.
I can't see how you can do that by setting aside the group because, as you
I
pointed
didn't say
out,
to
if we
set
were stuck in
aside
a
the
room
group.
together,
Yeah, I said to set aside the size of the group. There could be just the two of us, or it could be millions of people living in a country like we are now. Either way, um, I mean, obviously, like what's harmful and what's not it can be different depending on those factors. But I mean,
uh,
there are endless factors that we could consider,
if you're not considering the
circumstances
size of the group beyond yourself, then if you're not considering the size of the group beyond yourself, then what other characteristics are you considering when you're referring to others?
characteristics of others. I don't know
Yeah,
what you
but
mean.
well, if the size of the group is unimportant, what is important about others? Is it not the size of the group?
Well,
Because what else is there
let's just
besides
say,
the size of the
yeah,
group
let's
and
just say that
their status? Well, that's basically it. I mean,
okay,
I
sure.
don't see how you can
So
get rid of the word group.
yeah, yeah, let me answer that. Let me try to answer that. If I'm considering taking an action and I'm saying, is this a moral action or an immoral action to take? And let's say that there is some kind of impact on others. But we're not going to specify whether that's just one other person or, everyone in the larger community that I live in. And we would either stipulate that the impact is going to be harmful, or we could stipulate that it's really going to be positive. I'm going to help others out. Does it matter at that point whether I'm talking about helping one person or helping everyone, or does it
Yes,
matter? Okay, in terms of whether it's moral or immoral.
yes.
Okay, so helping one person and helping a lot of people. Which one of those is immoral?
Well, I'm saying the number of people is definitely a moral factor in my opinion.
But not in
Okay.
terms of whether something is moral or immoral.
Yeah,
Because
in
if I'm
terms of
only
moral or
helping
immoral.
one person, if I'm only helping one person, that's still a moral action, right?
Yes, it is. Of course it is.
Okay. But
But you also
are you
have
saying it gets, go ahead.
but I also see a moral obligation to society at large. So a single action is fine in and of itself and helping society in and of itself. But I think it's a spectrum that has to be accounted for between oneself and the rest of society, basically along the lines of the trolley problem.
Okay, so
Yeah. So
you're talking about if you have to choose between helping one person and helping a lot of people, helping a lot of people is a better and more moral decision than just helping one person when you could have done otherwise. Now you're
yes,
bringing up a
yes,
moral dilemma between those two things, and you remember my example was not like that. I was just saying if we're taking two examples of things that you could do, and we're stipulating that one helps one person and one helps more people, right? We're not saying you
yeah,
have to do one or the other like a dilemma in the trolley problem. We're just asking about both of them. Are they not both moral? Like, let's say I have the
yes,
trolley problem. Let's say the trolley problem is happening in front of me. But in this case, I can get down there and rescue all of them. I can rescue the one guy who's on the track by himself, and I can rescue the multiple
5 guys.
people that are on the other side. Is it not?
Yeah,
Are both not good to do, or is one of them bad?
bad. What's bad?
Well, we're talking
There's a
about immoral.
well,
So do we
no,
need to
we're
go
not.
back and read? Yeah, I
Well,
thought
no,
we were
what I'm
talking about
saying
what's
is that
moral and what's not moral.
yeah, so it's important to have spectra in here. I can't put it in black and white terms, so I have to be able to ask what's bad, what's evil, what's good, what's great. All 4 of those terms have relative values. They all have spectra values. There's a best good, there is a less good. There is still good, but it's not quite as good. There is slightly bad, there's real bad, there's terrible. There has to be spectra here. There's not just
Yeah, I'm
morality is
not
not just a
disputing
black and
that.
white issue.
I'm not. But wouldn't you say that if we're talking about something, you could say, well, that's either I'm either going to say this assesses as moral, or it assesses as immoral, or maybe it's in some kind of gray area where I can't tell. But if we were to say, well, there's a lot of spectrum of better and worse there, that wouldn't refute the fact that some things are bad and some things are good, some things are moral, some things are immoral. We can still at least have that conversation, can't we?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so I was just trying to make the point. We've been at it a little while here, that you can have the view that helping more people is the even better or even more moral action than the one that only helps one person. But in both
If everything else
cases,
is equal.
it's helping other people. It's an action that benefits other people that we would say that's a moral action. Whereas if the action we were stipulating was hurting other people, then we would say that's wrong either way.
Well, maybe there's another way to come at it too. Like maybe there's a subjective aspect to this. Like what is your subjective framework for it? Like, are you appealing to a consequentialist framework or virtue ethics framework or social contract framework? Which one do you like the most? Like, responsibility to the community, I think, is moral when it protects shared conditions, like for our flourishing, say, without sacrificing individual dignity or autonomy, for example. And which framework maybe would better address that if you would agree into it? Because you have to agree into it, and that's the subjective aspect I'm talking about. Ethics versus individualism, and things like that.
Well, I think
Yeah,
a
social
lot of
contract.
times, sure. I think all those things have their place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think
And
what we
Dave,
think
you
of
you
as
you
morality is a confluence of those things. Yeah.
yeah.
I
And
think
yeah,
it's also Can I add one quick thing here? Because we're always talking about others. So maybe we should also say, and what's in it for me? So it's always a question of what's in it for me and what's in it for others as well. So if you take a look at the trolley problem again and say you can magically put yourself in front of the trolley on one side or the other, and what is really happening is the exchange of, let's say, money or taxes or something like that, then we can see a much clearer picture. Do I get more or does the community get more? Do I get more or do I give more? Um, those become very practical questions. Okay, but we have to say what's in it for me as part of that equation, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that whenever we are looking at any action or behavior that someone's taking, we're undoubtedly going to need to ask that question. I think the really valuable thing about these kinds of thought experiments, like the trolley problem, is that we can just kind of stipulate that there isn't anything for you. You're just a guy up there, who has access to the levers. You know, and so it really just boils down to not only you're pumping your own intuition for what is it that I think is right here, and so that we can kind of isolate it because we're using that kind of hypothetical. Obviously, nothing happens in that kind of isolation in the real world, but yeah, I mean, if you found out that someone said, well, hey, I had the chance to save one person or save 5 people and I saved one, and you were like, well, why did you do that? And the answer was, well, because that was also the option that I got paid $1 million, and so I benefited. So I said, well, I'll pick that one. Then of course we would view that differently morally. We would say, well, maybe you should have saved more people and not been thinking about your own bank account, right?
Right.
But that's but
Exactly.
that's adding all that context into a situation that wasn't there to begin with. What
But
was
it
there
is
to begin
there,
with
isn't
was
it?
just meant to pump your intuition. No, the example of the trolley problem usually doesn't include anything about getting paid to make a choice. I mean, that would really skew the whole point of the thought experiment, which is to pump your own intuition.
Right.
Um,
Right.
Now, if the intuition is, what would you do if someone was offering you $1 million? Would you go against your moral principles? Then that's a fine question to ask, but it's not the one we're asking today, because the one we're asking today is about the difference between the size of the group. Remember that's where we
Okay.
started from? You were
Okay.
saying the size of the group is an important thing to consider alongside of suffering. And I'm certainly willing to say that, like, we should be more concerned with suffering that's widespread and affecting more people than we should with the suffering of an individual. But lessening the suffering of the individual is still a moral thing to do. It doesn't
Yeah.
become immoral. Whereas if we change it from suffering to well-being, hey, instead of causing suffering, now we're causing an increase in well-being. Now it does change from immoral to moral. That's what I'm saying. It hinges on whether we're hurting someone or helping someone. It doesn't hinge on how many people we're hurting or helping.
Ew. I almost see what you're saying. Say that again, would you?
Oh, that's
That
beautiful.
I'm thinking
Well,
about that. Yeah.
that's one of the best things to hear someone say. Um, okay, so what I'm saying is that if we're talking about whether something's moral or immoral, it's either going to be moral because it helps someone, or it's going to be immoral because it hurts them. That's where it hinges on whether it's moral or immoral, is whether it hurts someone or helps someone. But if the someone is one person or a whole group of people, it doesn't become moral or immoral. It's still moral if you're helping them, and it's still immoral if you're hurting them. It doesn't hinge on the size of the group. Is it making sense still?
Yeah, it does make some sense to me, yes. And I can see that the application that you're saying as true uh, in, yeah, I can see the application as true without Yeah,
Okay.
I can see that. I can't disagree with that.
Now, to be fair, I completely understand why thinking about how many people are being affected is not something that we just set aside like it doesn't matter. So I think maybe that's what the way you were thinking about it. I just again, it doesn't. It's not on the same level as whether or not we're having a good impact or a bad impact. If the impact we're having is causing suffering, or if the impact we're having is increasing the well-being of a person. That's the real consideration. And so to get back to the step before that, which was about the difference between subjectivity and objectivity, is that it might be objective fact about what hurts people and what helps people, right? Like an apple is good for you and poison is bad for you.
Yeah.
But and we would say that's objective, right? But what's subjective is that we care about our own well-being and we care about the well-being of others, right? Now that's not
Yes.
a choice. It's not like deciding what flavor of ice cream you would like to order today. But it is still subjective. And the reason it's subjective is because it is a stance, it's a mental stance that many of us share.
It's the
Many of us
caring.
have this stance. Yes, it comes naturally to us. Now, we could say that's an objective fact about humans,
Hmm.
that we mostly care about well-being and we mostly care about the well-being of others. But of course, we couldn't say it was a universal fact about all people.
Right.
Um,
The way
but
I look at it, Joel, just to jump in, is
yeah,
you make a really fascinating point, and it brings me to, again, this non-dual sort of perspective, that there's both. There's an objective component at play, and then there's a subjective component at play, and you need both because, just like, have you ever watched these National Geographic shows, right? Say they talk about lions or monkeys or some animal, and they say, they start spitting off objective facts about the animal. Like one of the facts about these animals is they're communal, or they're these kind of animals. This is one of the things that we can define them as. This is like a fact we can observe in nature about lions, or about whatever, that they're social animals, they're pack animals, or they're this and that. And it's the same thing, like you were saying, with humans. Maybe it's some sort of objective fact about humans, to be empathetic, to be about rearing children, and being communal and tribal and all this kind of stuff. But there's got to be that subjective part of it too, because that's kind of where all the meaning to do it comes in. Like there's got to be this
that's the
thought.
ontological status of the
Yeah.
thing, right? Is that it is a
Yep.
thing that is mind dependent. Our minds create values for the things
Right.
that we want. Yeah.
Right.
And it's
Right.
it's in response to facts about nature,
Right.
facts about
Right.
reality,
Right.
but it's still our minds creating
Right. There's
meaning
an
value.
interplay. Yeah, that intersection. And Calaspatism has joined. If you have any questions for anybody, just jump on in.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear
Hear you.
you.
Okay. All right. It's collapsitalism, the
Collapse.
the
Oh,
collapse
collapse.
of capitalism.
Oh, I
Hey,
see.
Joel, you were making some really great points. That was
Oh,
really
thank you.
nice. Dave, I do have a question for you though. Do you believe morals are objective?
Yes,
Why do you believe morals are objective?
because money is objective, and I
Well,
believe money is the energy of society,
where
and
did
I
money
believe.
come from, Dave?
Why does that matter?
I'm just asking, where did money come from?
Came from several sources. It came from the desire to hold gold. It came from the need to be able to guard a farmer's field. It came from exchange. It came from barter processes. It came twice in China,
So it's
actually.
not an inherent fact, correct?
No, it's a very inherent fact. It's what we have.
No,
You
no,
got
no.
you.
You just told me 10 different ways of money. If it was an inherent fact, there would be one, correct?
No, inherent. You said money is there. It exists. It doesn't. That makes
Yeah.
it inherent.
Who came up with it is what I'm asking.
And I'm saying that the history
People.
of it is
People.
irrelevant.
People. Money came from the mind, correct?
No, it came from a
Mhm.
objective need to show what we have done, how we have traded, what one is owed. The process of tit for tat,
If I
the
Go
process
ahead.
of generous tit for tat and tit for tat too. These are very important processes by which we interact.
Dave, when you say money, do you mean all forms of bartering?
Well,
Or do you mean printed money? Do you mean coins? Do you mean when society, like when we actually started civilization and society, that kind of money? Or do you just mean how people acquired goods throughout human history?
I'm talking about I'm talking about our current use of dollars and cents.
But it's not objective because I can pay for things with Bitcoin. That's not money.
Yeah, it is.
Why?
It's because it has a direct translation. You can look it up. It's like $82,000 a coin.
Okay, no, I understand. I understand what it is, but it's not money. I could trade a brick of drugs for a car. Is that money?
Effective. Well, barter on an individual basis is true and valid, but it doesn't discount the existence of money.
I don't want to derail this too much, guys. Because I am genuinely curious, Dave, on why you think morals are objective. Because some people may not have the same morals as you. Where do your morals come from?
My morals
Yeah.
come from the engineering processes that I have studied, and
Explain.
the religious processes I've studied.
Okay.
Well, I'm the son of a rabbi, very
Okay.
Jewish in my origins. I was tortured in Hebrew school for 12 years
Okay.
after
Well,
public school.
you don't have to say torture.
Well, that's the truth. Okay,
I don't
okay,
think you
that's
were
the way I observe
tortured.
it. Yeah, tortured. I was
I don't
tortured in
think
Hebrew.
so. Subjectively, you were tortured, correct?
Well,
Or
yeah,
objectively?
subjectively.
Okay. All right.
That's my
All right.
opinion. I have no
Yeah.
facts to prove that. I was also tortured by evangelists. I'm
What do
slightly
what do you?
autistic.
Oh, hey, me too. Welcome to the club, buddy.
Okay, yeah, I was. I was slightly autistic. I said I had to figure this out. I went into engineering, and when I looked into engineering, I saw engineering processes that seem to always hold true. That's
Are laws objective?
what kind of laws?
Like just the criminal law, tax law.
Yes,
Those are objective?
yes, they are. Once they're
Why?
written down, they're history because they're written down, and we have
No,
agreed on them. We have consensus.
that doesn't make something objective.
Why not?
Well, because I could not agree with that law.
Well, I didn't say you had
Thus,
to agree. It simply exists. It's that book. It's that.
no. I know, but just because somebody came up with something out of their subjective mind and then they write
Objectively
it
true.
down, that doesn't make it objective, right?
I
Like
don't.
See, this
you
is the
cannot
I don't
this is
understand.
the difference between my mind and your mind, the internal and external distinction.
Go
Someone
ahead,
can
Joel.
something can depend on someone else's mind. It's now external to my mind. It's not subject to my opinion, but they still came up with it. You know, it's still out there. It's like Lord of the Rings. Everybody knows that it was made up, but there are facts about Lord of the Rings, like Bilbo is a hobbit and Gandalf is a wizard, right? It's not up to
Yeah,
our opinion, but it's mind dependent in its ontology, meaning it's not a real thing that happened in history. These weren't real people that existed. It's made up, right?
No, I objectively believe that the Lord of the Rings is real. Like I can go pick up the Lord of the Rings. My thing is with laws, just because they're written down, that doesn't make them objective. That doesn't make them true. Like stealing bread because you're gonna starve to death is that objectively bad because it's against the law?
Good question.
Actually, depends on whether or not you're starving or not.
No, I
Because of the trolley
literally
problem.
here. Yeah,
Because of the trolley problem.
Dave, I laid it out. Here's the hypothetical. Is it objectively bad to steal food if you're going to starve to death?
No,
Why? It's a law. You can't steal.
there's another law. You have to eat.
No,
Everyone
that's
has to
not.
eat.
That is not a law. Where is that written down?
That's a natural law.
Where is that written down?
It's written down in engineering.
Yeah,
Everything
okay,
is energy, and everything is energy transfer.
But criminal law is written down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can we parse that they're both objective?
Well,
If
natural law and human-based laws have different statuses in my mind. Nature's my datum of truth. I don't know what your datum of truth is. If your datum of truth is criminal law, then criminal law is always right. I mean, that's Kohlberg. Didn't Kohlberg say a whole bunch of things about morality? His 6 stages or something?
well, I don't believe morality's objective. Nobody can
Oh.
tell me where they got their morals from.
I think I can.
Go ahead.
Well, it'll take a while.
Well,
And
I don't.
yeah,
it's up to Scott. I mean, I could tell you at least in the short term that, like, hey, my morals come from who I grew up with, what I was taught. Are we inherently so the human race, if we're going to talk about morals being like law, right? Like, or objective, I again don't believe that, right? But
okay.
I do believe within human evolution that we have evolved to be I don't want to use the word empathetic, but we have evolved to work together as a group because we have realized that working together is beneficial. I don't want to come punch you in the face, Dave, because I don't want you to come punch me in the face. That is the only thing stopping me from doing that. No law will stop me from doing that. No fence will stop me from doing that. No door will stop me from doing that, if that's what I want to do, because I morally feel I want to punch you in the face, right? But I don't do it because I don't want you to do it to me.
So you're talking a difference. I see a difference between what you're saying as subjective, your subjective opinion of the law, versus the law itself. The law itself is objective, but your opinion of the law is something you want to ignore. In the particular case of punching somebody in the face, I mean, just hypothetically, I'm simply saying that I see an objective law, then I see a subjective opinion of the law. Those are separate.
No. Dave,
Yeah.
Dave.
What?
A law is subjective anyways, because we came together as a society and we decided, hey, maybe people shouldn't go around punching each other in the face. We subjectively decided that because, again, there's nothing that would stop me from doing that.
But this decision itself changes it to objective. Yeah, we discuss it. We have subjectivity in it. I absolutely agree. That's the process by which it came about. But it's been agreed on. It's a consensus.
So you've never committed any, like, when I say crimes, I don't mean it like that. You've never done anything where you go, maybe I shouldn't do that.
I have. Certainly I have.
So
I'm a human being.
So don't you think morals would be objective or subjective at that point?
Yes, it's both subjective and objective.
So Dave, you can't have inherent morals, objective morals, and subjective ones. They have to come from because they have to come from somewhere. Why is
the history important at all?
Well, history is important. That's not even what.
Why is where it came from important?
He's talking about ontology. He's talking about ontology. This is the ontology of morals. Sorry,
Okay,
can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
we hear you.
I was silent because I was listening to
Okay.
you speak, because you came in the first
I'm
time
so sorry.
really eloquent. So I wanted to hear what you had to say.
I know. I'm sorry. I burst right in with
Oh,
so
do
much
not
grace.
do not
This is the difference of when
apologize.
you're calling it history. Dave, you're calling it history, and in some ways it is the history of a thing. But the point is if its origin is mind dependent or not. Is it something that people or other minds kind of come up with? That's the question. That's important. That's usually the question people are asking about when they're asking about whether morality is objective or subjective.
It is, other minds do come up with the same results in the same physical area. It seems like morality throughout the planet evolved based on the available resources and the requirements, the needs for them.
Wouldn't that be subjective then?
It was, well, they still need to eat. Everyone needs to eat. So you have to deal with the issue that there's simply not enough resources.
No.
Or there's enough resources, or the resources will come back.
You have to finish that if you're going to use that as an example, because no, not everybody needs to eat.
Who doesn't need to eat?
Everybody.
Okay, in the period of a week, everybody needs to eat.
You don't need to eat, Dave.
I don't need to eat.
No.
You say never. You never need to eat.
You never need to eat. You have
okay,
to
if
eat.
I want to survive, I
no.
need to eat.
No,
yeah, so it's dependent on your want. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes,
that's
not
why I say it's an intersubjective connection to objective.
It would be objective that you would die if you don't eat. That's the only objective thing in that. It's not objective that you need to eat, Dave. That's not objective. Your mind wants you to eat because you're hungry. The only thing that will happen to you is if you don't eat, objectively, you will die.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to what I was saying about the protesters who deliberately starve themselves to death in protest. It's like they don't need to eat, and they know that. That's why they don't eat, because their want is to protest a point is more important subjectively to them than the fact of surviving.
Yes.
Yeah, but
I don't argue with that.
But I think my biggest thing, when I was in chat going off, I wasn't actually like mad or yelling at you. My biggest thing is I think you're misunderstanding what would be objective and subjective, because you started off by saying objectively women took care of kids. No.
Right.
Like, no. You can't say if one man has taken care of a kid, you can't say objectively women take care of kids. Subjectively, go ahead.
I have to simply use the word most in there.
I'm sorry.
I have to say most women have taken care. Mostly kids have been taken care of by women.
And then it can no longer be objective. Is the point?
Why is that not so? Why is that still not objective?
Because it's not a fact.
Why does the fact have to be inclusive? If I say most women, if I have my language right, if I can say that most women have taken care of infants to 1 year old throughout history.
Subjectively, you think that.
Yeah, but it's true. It's an objectively. It's provable.
Okay.
Well, yeah, this is the blind spot that I was. We went over this before. And this is and I'm trying not to bring it here, so I'm just gonna mention it, and then I'm gonna back off because I don't have a whole lot of time left. But this
sorry, Scott, I wasn't trying to.
Oh yeah, no, it's not you. It's just that where the conversation is gonna naturally go. I already saw it coming. So what is gonna happen is we're gonna get into the primacy of experience and consciousness and subjectivity and intersubjectivity, how all of those things happen, and what's gonna happen is we're going to have a collapse into an idealistic sort of view versus an objective point of view, where an objectivist will say, oh, everything is objective. And that's where everything is grounded into objectivity. And even your subjective mind is grounded in objective facts. So ultimately everything is objective, even morals. And then what's going to happen
No,
is you
no,
can have an
moral.
idealistic
Oh,
view
sorry, go
that'll say, no, the primacy is consciousness, which is subjective by nature. And so these moral dilemmas, these moral judgments really collapse into subjective opinion. And so that's going to get into that whole debate. And so I'm just saying that's that seems like where it's already going.
Yeah, no, for sure. Dave, I guess my biggest thing is why I wanted to get on this call is because I really appreciated that Joel was telling you something and you went, oh, I didn't think about it. I thought you said ill. And I was like, why'd you say ill? But you said, oh, I didn't think about that. And that's really, Dave, that's
Thank you.
really good to do, is when somebody says something that you haven't thought of before.
Yeah.
And you go, oh shit, I didn't think about that before. And that's kind of what I want you to take away from this. I really want you to go back and think why your morals are objective. Because I don't think morals are objective at all. Like I decide on my morals because of how I grew up, how I wanted to be treated. If I grew up, let's just say I grew up in Saudi Arabia in Wahhabi Islam, I might have a more radical moral set, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
So that's what I mean by morals are just subjective across the board, because one person will tell you burning 6 million people in World War II is okay, where I would go, no, morally that is not okay. But who's correct? Because in their mind they believe they're correct doing that. In my mind, I believe I'm correct by them not doing that. And that's kind of that's my biggest thing, is that we can't say morals are objective because we don't know where we get them from. You can say you get them from engineering, but I don't think you can actually prove that to me.
I can say this. I can say this, that morality is the ability to tell the difference between good and bad, right and wrong, and a description of it is an evolutionary characteristic that helps us minimize suffering and hopefully minimize conflict. Those two
I
statements,
agree with you.
Okay, so those two statements allow me to then take it back to energy very quickly because of the fact that people will starve to death. So
This is
I
very
can, in
similar.
fact,
Just
all
to
right, go
jump
ahead.
in really quick, this is very similar. Just understand this is very similar to the Christian presuppositional apologetic. You're just making the God the nature. So in other words, like the Christian precept will say, well, all morals come from God. That you can't have right and wrong unless there's a
Without
God.
God, yeah.
Without God, right? So you're kind of making it the same thing when you say engineering. It's almost like, well, you can't really have the morals without the engineering. And so that's like one tick away from that that form of apologetic. That's just something to consider. What do you think about that, Dave? Dave, what do you think?
No, Dave, you here? We're having a good conversation.
He cut out, maybe.
Yeah, I wouldn't think he ran.
It's easy to have issues. It's easy
I
to have
appreciate you
issues
for
on StreamYard.
Yeah.
Oh, he did say that. Scott, I want to appreciate you letting me in on this call.
Yeah, man.
Joel, that was a great opening when you came in. I was like, damn, how am I gonna even call in after him? I'm thinking, shit, he's way too eloquent for me.
Yeah, Mr. Joel is very eloquent, man.
Well,
hey, let me ask you guys
again,
something.
Sorry for butting in rudely, but yeah, go ahead.
Scott, okay, so Joel, are you a atheist, a theist, ex-theist?
Yeah, ex-theist, atheist, agnostic, and try to be skeptical kind of person.
Okay. Yeah, okay. And then Scott, you said you were Christian, and then
Used to
then
went to atheism. So now I'm kind of like
angry
Joel in a
atheism.
way. I was an angry. I was so angry.
I'm glad you didn't say it this time.
No. I used to be. No, I'm not anymore. I'm just atheistic, agnostic about most things. I only claim to know that I exist pretty much. But I do make inferences. So I have certain inferences like non-dualism and different worldviews and things, but I don't claim to know them 100%. So I take a very humble approach
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
philosophy. Like I don't look at philosophy as capital T truth type stuff. I think it's just questioning certain assumptions that never go questioned, you know.
I'll be honest with you. For as long as we've been doing philosophy, I don't think we need to do it anymore. Nothing
Really?
matters. Yeah, nothing matters.
Well, that's a philosophical point, though, you know.
I personally believe
There's a
it's true.
philosophy called that. Yeah, that's your philosophy.
No, it's just not worth pondering. Dave, did you happen to hear what Scott said? The question he asked you, by the way?
I don't think I did. I don't know what happened to my phone. It just went to sleep on me or something.
Oh, you guys are on your
I was just saying that an observation I was making, you know how you were saying that everything sort of grounds out into engineering. Like there's a Christian view called presuppositionalism, and it says basically that everything grounds out into God. So you really can't have right or wrong, rationality, logic without God. So it's almost like you're kind of making the same argument. You're just replacing God with engineering. Does that make sense? Or is that accurate?
I can accept that. Yeah, I don't have a real issue with that at all. Yeah, I
Okay, yeah, I
can
noticed
handle
that.
that.
I kind of thought, yeah, I connected that together just listening to you. So
Yeah,
a lot of people, you know, then, and I think this creates a lot of tension with a lot of people because presuppositionalism is based on an assumption. So it's an assumption that God, therefore. And so you're saying engineering, therefore morals and stuff like that.
actually, I'm saying nature. Therefore,
Right.
I'm not really saying engineering. Engineering is the study of nature
Okay.
and how to optimize what we make with it.
Well, yeah.
And some people call nature God. Yeah.
I won't hang you up on what exactly you call it. So you don't. What you just said, when you look back, what you just said, you don't find that subjective at all?
I do find subjectivity in it. I certainly do. But I am so quirky in a public conversation, and I'm so quirky in public. I really can't get along with people. I'm a loner.
I think you're doing a great job. I think
Well,
you're doing
thank
a
you very
great
much.
job. You've been,
But
Dave is a
yep,
wonderful guy. He's
but
very helpful. He's wonderful.
but the subjectivity is, yeah, I see subjectivity throughout my mind and everything I do, but I objectively see how people react and need. I objectively see how people behave. And when it's either subjective or objective, if monism is required in your argument, which doesn't stand up to Occam's razor, then if monism is really required in your argument, then it usually ends up that people either end up behaving objectively because they've given up on the subjective, or they are loving and subjective and end up losing their shirt. They lose everything they have.
what do you? Sorry, I'm confused. What do you mean by that? They lose everything they have. I think this is where I got confused at the
And
beginning.
what is
In
living objectively
1969,
and living subjectively? That's what I thought. I couldn't make sense of that.
yeah, living subjectively and only subjectively allows people to use the Mandela effect to confuse you. The Mandela effect means they can change your memory by simply repeatedly saying something that's not true until you think it's true.
Well, that's propaganda, but
that can
okay.
happen to any of us, regardless
But
of what our view is on ontology in terms of monism or dualism.
but the objective truth of how our society has behaved since 1980 has been to use the difference between sophistry and apologia to, in effect, convince people to follow trivial arguments so that the 1% can take their money. And last year, the 1% made twice as much as the other 99%.
All right,
in terms
Dave,
of money.
You're getting into my territory, okay? When we talk about
you're not gonna
money
get
and the 1%.
You're not
But
going to get disagreement.
yeah, you
about
won't
the
get disagreement with
problem.
me at all.
There's a real problem there.
But
I don't
here's
think
another
it's a
thing.
new thing that governments are using those kinds of psychological tools on people.
Well, they didn't
Yeah.
before until the fairness doctrine was removed, and the ability of the common man to defend himself in a corporation because of the trickle down effect. Okay,
I
so
get what you're saying.
What, the piss that's trickling down onto my head?
yeah, exactly, and all of that can be shown that it is that the 99% really deserves more money than the 1% at this point.
And
Now, in
that's promoted
1969,
by dualism, though. Like when you think of pure communism, communal, that's oneness, that's monism.
right,
So, but what you're saying, because you had said something that monism doesn't stand up to Occam's razor.
right, it
From
doesn't.
what I understand, Occam's razor is pointing to the more parsimonious or less, right?
Um, Actually, it's one-sided again. It becomes one-sided. You have to have a mixture. You have to always have the both sides in there to make the non-dualism. The dualism has an emergent property of a non-dualism, and that non-dualism requires both sides. It requires something like a capitalism, so people can actually feel they're getting the right thing out of their thing, but it also requires the ability to be communal, and so
Well,
it requires
Occam's
both.
razor,
Sorry.
but
I can't.
Occam's razor is when you don't multiply entities, kinds, or assumptions beyond necessity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so Occam's
parsimony,
razor.
Shaving away unnecessary
yeah,
assumptions.
parsimony is
So
about explanatory economy, not
But
surface
guys, I'm sorry.
simplicity.
so then you'd have to agree
Go ahead,
that
Joel. You're just
hunger
kind of low.
is fundamental.
Say that again, Dave.
You have to agree that hunger is fundamental.
Well, I think so I'm a little confused. Not that I'm disagreeing with you with anything, but morals, objective, subjective, and then now we're on essentially the fucking fall of I'm sorry, I don't mean to cuss if we can't cuss on here, but
No, you
now
can.
we're
Go ahead.
now we're on the fall of capitalism, which again, you won't get any pushback from me, but that is
Yeah, we're in agreement.
yeah, would be from dualism.
Yeah, that's dualism, right?
And guys,
That
I
wouldn't
can't help
be
but feel like
from
we're just throwing this term around.
Joel, that's what I was getting to, but go ahead because you could probably
We're
say it better than
we're
me.
saying like any example of people getting together, well, that's monism. Any kind of division between people, that's dualism. And yes, the term applies in that way. It just means something totally different than when we're talking about the ontological
Yeah.
foundation of reality. And that's the difference between idealism, materialism, or a dualistic metaphysics that thinks that both are happening, right? So I'm
Well,
just
that's what
saying
Dave was saying. So Dave was actually explaining how this monism, this dualistic way of thinking, promotes the best good for society. And so
but
I
you
was
know
just trying
how
to
I
say you
feel
could
about,
argue
yeah,
different. Yeah,
right. And I do take issue with that because I'm agnostic
right.
on what the metaphysics are behind this. And I still have opinions about how people should treat each other, like whether our economy should work the way it does or for everyone, all these things, right? And I'm saying, no, you don't have to root these things in metaphysical positions. It's
Hmm.
not about, it's not a dualist versus monistic view for me when I have these opinions on
Right.
the economy or morals or laws or anything else.
Well,
And
I agree with
and
you too.
and Dave, I mean this in the best way possible. I do, like Joel said, I do think you're throwing that word around the way you shouldn't. If I had another 2 hours with you, I think you would come to the same conclusion that we've all came to. You're there.
I may.
You're finding the contradictions, or I don't want to say, but you're finding you're acknowledging
Tensions.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're acknowledging things that we agree with, whereas you get to a point. Look, your end goal is, I'm sure none of us would disagree with your end or where you ended up by saying, hey, we're being robbed blind by these barons, like while we got to worry about the Epstein files and all of that. They're just robbing our country. They're robbing our treasury. by the 1%. We will probably all agree with that. And so my biggest thing, I guess, I was really confused, and I'm glad Joel said it as well, is you're using that word just like on the meta side of it. And to be honest, Dave, fuck the meta side of the world. And maybe that's just me, but it doesn't matter. The meta side doesn't matter. It's what we are doing in our life today with the people around us. Not what
like
what
yesterday. Oh, I'm sorry. Go right ahead, brother.
Oh, not and I'll finish this up real quick, right? Like we can access the meta all day, right? Like I'm somebody who will have the conversation with facts and all of that, but I'll also throw out ad hominems. I'll call you stupid, I'll call you lazy, I'll call you ugly, I'll say your teeth is fucked up. Because if you're objectively wrong about something, we live in a world now where those people aren't told enough, right? And so when you're doing the meta of just this one word, or this dualism, in the best way possible, I don't think you're using it correctly. I don't think you're looking at the world, not saying your worldview is wrong. I want to get that clear. I don't think your worldview is wrong. I just think the way you're trying to put the meta, like the metaphysical, whatever you want to call it, I think you would do better not trying to look at the world like that.
Yeah, like yesterday I did a reaction to this Christian apologist who, again, he said that, look, he said the world is dualistic and it's grounded in God. And so his whole point was, if your child, your baby, is raped and killed and cut into a million pieces, if you don't believe in God, you have no right to complain, because your complaints are only subjective. They're not there. It's a wrong view. He said, if you complain about your child being murdered and all of this stuff, you have no right to complain, because you don't have the right metaphysic. The metaphysic should be inclusive of a God who grounds morality objectively. It's objective, not subjective. And if you think that it is subjective, then you really are telling yourself you have no right to complain about anything, because it's just your opinion at that point. So you have to ground it in objective in order to have the right to complain. But the fact that you do complain only proves that actually morality and all that stuff is grounded in God. And so that was his point. And what the lady he was talking to was saying, all of that stuff really doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, regardless of what your worldview is, you're still going to feel some kind of way about your child being murdered, you know?
I agree with you, but I mean, obviously that your child being murdered is extremely painful, and it should be painful. I mean, that's the way we're built to feel that pain. The need to believe in God. I believe in God. I personally do, but I don't see why anyone else should necessarily. I don't see why that has to be grounded that way, because we have enough organic information to show that we would physically hurt if our kids were hurt or murdered or killed. I remember when my son flipped over a car, and I could barely stand. I shut down right there in the middle of my job, and I couldn't react to anybody else at that moment.
That's because you're a normal person. Some people don't care about that kind of stuff.
Sure. And that's why I keep looking at the society level. I don't like to look at the individual level that much, because I don't want to be able to put in a position where I have to say this person made the right decision, this person made the wrong decision. I say the society as a whole, based on large numbers and on small numbers, actually a spectral number. Consensus, yes.
Consensus views of what's moral. Okay, that I get what you're saying. That
in that case, everything can be grounded in nature. Everything, evil,
sure.
Good, bad, everything. So there's no special pleading for one thing over the other, and that's where subjectivity comes in.
Well, can I explain what my God is then?
Nature, right?
Can I explain what my God is for a moment? Okay.
That was actually one of my questions for you, but yeah, go ahead.
Okay, if
Can't hear
if
Scott.
I can say that nature requires that I get hungry, and I can say I have a mind, and I think therefore I am, I can say I can add those two things together, and it can't be nature and it can't be mind because neither of those things are zero. I can call that a sliver, a divine spark. And if I add all the divine sparks and all the living things, or all things that react, that's God to me.
Do you believe in the biblical God?
No,
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, all right.
no, not
What
at
were you
all.
gonna
I
say,
don't.
Joel? I think Joel was trying to say something.
Oh, sorry. I just no, that was a mistake. I thought I couldn't hear you, but that was my mistake.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
you guys go ahead.
No,
Dave, you don't believe in a divine entity.
The divine entity of the universe and all of its complications added together, the interfaces of it all, the complexity of it all, the divineness of each of us added together is my God, not a biblical thing,
Yeah.
not a sky daddy.
I mean, I could say the same thing. I lean on the side of we live in a simulation.
The
There's
Matrix.
evidence. No, I wouldn't say the Matrix. It's insane if you actually think about it, right? Like if our universe is 14 billion years old, okay,
Yeah.
and there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of stars and planets and all of that. In that 14 billion years, you have to think of three things, okay? Either there is no life except for us that has ever sprung up, and we are just the anomaly. Um, there is an intelligent life that has sprung up but decided not to simulate the universe, or you live in a simulated universe. Like
There's also
what?
another option too,
But hold
and
on,
that's
just really quick, Dave.
morphogenesis.
What out of
Let him
those
finish.
three, Dave? Out of those three, what do you think would be the most logical?
What are the three
Either
again, real quick?
Okay, so the three is in the 14 billion years that our universe has been, that we scientists agree on, right? About 14 billion years old, whatever. You have three
Yeah.
options: that we are the only ones, and there hasn't been anything else. There has been an intelligent civilization that decided not to simulate the universe. Mind you, we are pretty close to simulating almost every atom in the universe, like on our own computers, right? Like on supercomputers.
Sure.
So intelligent species didn't do that. Or your third option is you live in a simulation.
I don't see why those are the only three options, but I would have to go with the
Dave.
first.
That's the simulation hypothesis. No,
Okay,
you think it's
but
logical in 14 billion years that we're the only intelligent life form that has sprung up?
nope.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm asking. What is the most logical? For me, it would be, well, in 14 billion years, yeah, I'm pretty sure there's been intelligent civilizations. So the math puts it on that I would live in a simulation more than I would actually be real.
I see the possibility of life in the physical universe in so many places, and I see the natural process by which it came about. How intelligent life, how life came about. I see enough of it
How do you know it's
to
not simulated? That's my question. How do you know people are there when you're not actually interacting with them? Do you actually know people are there unless you don't know anybody is actually a thing until you interact with them?
So you
but
are interested
if
in the
I interact with
metaphysical.
them and then I leave, if I stop interacting with them, can I still say they exist?
That's the question. Do they?
I have to assume they do.
Why? Why do you assume they do?
Because of the nature of the reality that I see around me, because of the nature of nature, because of the nature of nature,
But how
not
do you know
reality.
how do you know that's
And,
not a simulation telling you to think like that?
I
and
don't
by the way,
entirely know.
just a quick thing I had
I
to
don't
throw out
I'm
there.
entirely
getting
know.
I'm getting off topic.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry,
no.
guys.
No, I was just gonna say this is very heavy philosophy and metaphysics. Like,
Yeah, we're definitely talking about metaphysics now.
yeah,
Oh,
I just wanted to.
I know.
I
So
don't know.
let me do this because I have to run, but I wanted to let Calaspatism understand. I love this topic. The the simulation hypothesis. And if you'd like, maybe this weekend we can do a topic on that. And I'd love you to jump in and join the panel when we
Scott,
talk about it.
I'm dumb as fuck. I lazily made my way through law school recently, and I do drugs and drink. Like, I'm dumb.
Hey,
I'm dumb.
I'm not smart either, man. I'm about as dumb as a rock. So you're in good company. So if you want, we can do it. We can do a show on that. Because I love that topic actually.
Yeah, hey, but again, I don't actually subscribe to it. I mean, again, it's either, we either live in a simulation.
Yeah, me too. I don't.
We could be Boltzmann brains, like, what do we know? So,
well, we can discuss all of that. Like, just talk about how it can be all kinds of things, but we can go into each one and let the audience decide. That's
yeah.
Well, it could be. But I also have to ask, why does it matter?
I don't think it does. Like, for me, it doesn't matter what I'm living in, whether it be a simulation, a Boltzmann brain, whatever. I'm here now. And this is the only thing I will ever know until I don't know, or I know something else, right? So my mind is, this is all I got. So I'm going to do the best I can here today. Even if I don't get better each day, even if it's a flat zero, as long as I don't regress to not being like a worse person, right? Like,
here's my answer, Dave.
I agree with that.
It may matter, Dave. How do we know it doesn't matter? Suppose we actually believe we're in a simulation. Does that level us up? And if it levels us up, do we have more chance of striking it big? Think about it. Some people claim that ever since they've actually seen and proceed in the world and navigate the world on the assumption that it's a simulation, they've seen the quality of their life improve. A lot of people who are now rich billionaires said they became billionaires after they understood it was a simulation. And
I do have to interject. Most billionaires come from money. So,
yeah. Exactly.
It's hard to.
Some people won the lot, or some people, but that's a big question that I have, because what I'm talking about, the billionaires and millionaires, I'm talking about people that won the lottery, people that got their money some weird kind of way, but they did these weird things. The way their stories that they told me happened were just very suspicious. Like like for years and years and years and years and years and years, it was like just the same mundane, I'm a victim bullshit. The system's just holding me down. Then I started, out of my desperation to try to see world differently, they started looking at the simulation theory. And I even had one on the show, and he started understanding, like, ever since then I could understand I can travel outside the simulation into other rooms of the simulation. And ever since then, I've been able to tweak out my experience here in this one. And they've become, independently wealthy and a lot of stuff, just because they've had this understanding. And now they kind of approach the game as getting better at the game. It's kind of like, once you're in a video game and you play the video game enough, you get better at the video game and you're able to become successful within your video game. And he was saying it's the same fucking thing in this world. This is a simulation. But that's just how he says it. Now, one could always argue, oh, how do you know that that's just not coincidence? Maybe
the results
it's just
don't speak to the truth of it.
Right, like it's interpretive. Maybe you're just interpreting that.
Yeah, when we're talking about successful capitalists, we have to kind of speculate that this idea that, like, hey, when I figured out that I was just living in a simulation, may factor into how important they view the suffering of others. Hey, is this practice that I'm doing gonna hurt a lot of people? I don't have to worry about it because I'm just in a simulation. Go ahead.
Yeah. But Joel, I was going to say too that a lot of the challenges in the game is to always have that question out there, to always have those sort of skeptical doubts are what constrains people. That's part of the game. That's like part of the challenge of the game. Like once somebody beats the challenge of skepticism and is able to kind of like test it out, like maybe just say, well, let me put my skepticism on the shelf for a minute, just for a little while, and let me just try it and see what happens. And then those are the people that kind of graduate into the next level. That's the argument anyways.
Yeah, which
Also,
is just kind of saying
DMT.
if they're getting good results, then that's evidence of the truth of it. And I'm saying that's not any more true about that than it is about the claim that
Right.
Christians make about
Right,
Jesus' lives.
exactly. That's the trick. That's the whole thing that I'm saying. It's like, this is why, you question assumption. That's philosophy for you. That's what philosophy is there for, to question those assumptions. Like, how do you know you're just not assuming, or you're inferring, you're interpreting, maybe that has saying nothing about the ontology, the truth of what is, But anyways, guys, I got to get out of here. I'm kind of running late. I have to take a drug test and all of this shit. I'm trying to get a
Oh,
job.
what kind of drugs are you testing?
I'm trying not to. I hope that they don't get me for that cocaine and the heroin, man.
Well, don't do heroin.
Be tweaking.
The downers are bad.
Yeah, man.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Joel, nice meeting you. Dave, nice meeting you.
Thank
Scott, nice
you.
meeting
Yeah,
you.
nice to meet
Dave,
you
I
too,
wanted to
bud.
say the same.
I've had a wonderful time.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah.
I think you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're gonna lose that dualism here in a minute, because you're gonna realize that dualism is just no. Anyways, sorry, I don't want to keep you.
All right,
Well,
man.
It was really
Okay.
cool talking to all y'all. Thanks again.
Yep.
Have
Love
a
you
great one,
guys.
okay?
Y'all be
Yeah,
good.
Okay,
have
thank
a
you very
Have a good
Merry Christmas, by the way, and Happy New Year.
Yeah. Yep.
Happy holidays,
Hell yeah.
Kwanzaa, fucking
All of
Hanukkah,
that.
whatever, Christmas,
Hanukkah.
all of it. Whatever
Ditto.
y'all
Yeah.
want.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah, man.
Scott, I'll email you so you have my email. And
Yeah,
then
do
if you
that.
want to talk.
Do that,
Yeah.
please.
All right.
Let's
All
do
right,
it,
guys.
man.
Have a
All
good
right,
one. I
guys.
appreciate you guys. Have a good day.
Later.
Have a great
Yeah.
one. Bye-bye.